Hello, everyone. This is Pam Sari. I direct the Asian American and Asian Resource and Culture Center at Purdue University. Today is Thursday, April 30th. The year is 2020. I'm here with Gwynal Condino. Gwen is our undergraduate student staff at the ARC. She is a rising senior in electrical engineering. And we are accompanied by our guest today, Tina Chen. Tina is one of our alum, and she is currently working as a technical program manager at Facebook AR VR. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Sure.
Okay, so you want to start, Gwen?
Yeah, so just so that we can get a little bit of your story, where is home for you? And maybe you could give us a couple of your favorite childhood memories and also your K-12 education background.
Sure. So this is always a complicated question because I think there's probably many in the Purdue Asian American community. It's pretty multicultural. So I was born in Taiwan, lived there until I was 9, and then pretty much did all of my schooling, K to 12, or yeah, I guess most of my schooling after that in South Africa. So I grew up in Johannesburg. I had gone to first year of university there in South Africa before I came to Purdue. So that's kind of my upbringing. Yeah, and I think you had another question that I forgot.
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
And you were at Purdue from 2000 to 2004, is that correct? Yes. Can you tell us more about your time at Purdue, what major you took at the time, and if there were organizations that you were part of? And also, we were curious about some of your favorite memories about Purdue and West Lafayette.
Cool. Yeah. So, well, I came to Purdue in kind of I guess, a not a conformed manner. So I actually was going to college in South Africa. My family had been robbed at gunpoint in our home when I was in high school. So my parents were pretty keen for me to pursue my education elsewhere outside of South Africa. And so I thought, so I started looking at different opportunities, had people help me. So a bunch of stuff that went up and kind of didn't pan out, long story there. But what netted out was I was actually doing pre-med or medicine in South Africa. And then I went just online because of all these things that didn't pan out. I just one day went online and started looking. And back in 1999, going online was still dial-up age. And there wasn't a lot of resources online, but I did find Purdue online. And I think it was probably April or May, so it's past most US college admission dates or some admission application dates. But Purdue had a rolling application, and the only thing they needed from me, even though I came from an English-speaking country, was TOEFL scores and nothing else. So I quickly also went online and found a local center, did the test quickly and submitted, and then got accepted very quickly. And then that's kind of how I came to Purdue. And then so the first year at Purdue was kind of like confusing for me because the schooling system between South Africa and the US is so different. And the way you commit yourself to a major and just the way the coursework is laid out is just all drastically different. So the first year was a little difficult. I had, I've always been sort of a self-taught programmer in high school. So I took the computer science major and with sort of a minor in pre-med or just like elective courses in pre-med. But the first year I didn't really enjoy it because the computer science program was not a very collaborative one. And that's just, it's not good or bad. It's just that that's who I am. I prefer a a collaborative environment where we, work together as a team and we can, think together and build things together. So that's kind of what drives me. And I didn't find that so much in the computer science department. And the pre-med courses were fine, but I also heard from counselors that it's really difficult as an international student to actually get admitted into the field. Also, I don't have a very good memory, so that's also good analytical skills, but bad memory skills. So that was another thing that played into it. And then I came to discover engineering, and I took the engineering intro to engineering class. And then I met, and I thought that, engineering is quite a cool field. And so I started taking sort of the first year engineering classes. And then I met a professor, and I forgot his name. He's in the ME department, and I just really clicked with him. Just like he has like lots of like life philosophies, and I really enjoyed the mechanical courses. So statics and dynamics, I really enjoyed that. I ended up TAing, or not TAing, but like grading that class, just because I enjoyed it so much. So that was so that's kind of my transition into engineering. And I didn't know sort of like if I wanted to commit to a certain specialty in engineering, and I thought if I was so passionate on one, I would pick it up after my undergrad. And so folks had just suggested that if I was so unsure, I could pursue industrial, because that gives you like a flavor into each, and then you can I always thought that I was going to pursue a master's degree after that. So I kind of went down that route. Some of my cool memories of Purdue was winters, going to school in winters at 7:30 a.m. class through the tunnels, and braving the dark and the wind was pretty, it was pretty interesting experience, given that I grew up in South Africa, and South Africa is very much like, or Johannesburg is very much like California. So, mild temperatures, sunshine all year long. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting experience. My first year, I also did some part-time work. So I lived, I lived in Earhart, and then I took up a job as I even forgot what it's called, like resident, I don't know, computer nerd person. So basically, there's like a sign-up sheet, and all the girls in the dorms can sign up where they need computer help. And when I had time, I would go and check off the list, and then I go visit people in my bunny slippers and my PJs and help them out with computer problems that ranged anywhere from like an actual networking problem to just like, things not actually connected properly. And that was a really neat experience for me, because like I enjoy helping people, so that's one, but mostly because I got to meet so many people and like just learn about the diverse background of people coming into Purdue. And that was just super fascinating to me. Just the communities that exist within this big campus, and how multicultural it was. So that was super neat. I didn't join any clubs or anything like an organization per se, any organized organization per se. Not sure why, maybe that's just a personality thing. I did start, like, I grew up in an atheist family, but at Purdue, I somehow came into, ran into friends who had a faith and started digging into that, and myself found faith there at Purdue. So that was quite meaningful for me.
That's great. So I was just wondering what you did after you graduated and how you think Purdue prepared you for the job market.
Yeah, that's also an interesting question. It was also not very well organized or thought through. So I was coming to graduation in 2003. I hadn't interned anywhere. And also think that was a time where it was hard to get a sponsorship for an H1. And that was also a time where OPT rules were changing. So in the summer of 2003, through an organization, I got placed in a summer program, like an internship here in California for a semiconductor company. And kind of, I was living in Stanford for the summer and basically doing an internship for this startup that was working in semiconductor. So the thing that they worked on was GPS chipsets that now we're so used to GPS, but back in 2003, no one even, like there wasn't even a TomTom thing. And the company, it was just a startup then. So I helped them with like very basic things like write scripts and yeah, so very, very basic things, I would say. So that's kind of like, I built a database and things like that. So yeah, so that's sort of like the last year of college. And then after I graduated, a lot of my friends, because of this uncertainty in the H1 sponsorship, a lot of folks just jumped into graduate degree. But I was pretty motivated to get off my parents' paycheck. So I got in touch with the folks that I interned with, and they had, while I went back to school, they had just IPO'd. So they had some money and they could hire me back. So they offered me a job, and I moved back to California to work for them. So that's kind of haphazardly I got into this the role that I was in back then through this opportunity. Yeah.
That is such an amazing journey. And how did working for that company, how did that lead you to your, more recent work with also big name companies? And right now, Facebook, but I think you also work at Google and Amazon before. So can you tell us that process of
Yeah,
going?
so I worked in that company for 7 years, and one of the reasons why I stayed there for so long was, well, actually there's a few, but if I'd be honest, one of the reasons is because I didn't have a green card, so I couldn't move around, and so I was kind of stuck there. That, if I'd be honest, that's one of the key reasons. A few other reasons is the community that a startup brought me. I'm still friends with all those people that I worked with almost 20 years ago. Every Christmas I see them, I see their kids, I know their kids. It's the community that kind of binds you. I learned a lot of things sort of ad hoc through working there. A lot of skill sets I gained while I was working there. So the community was one of the reasons. And then the last reason is because the company is so small that when you go in, you're kind of expected to just pick up lots of threads and just kind of run with it. And during my stay there, I had changed from positions from a software developer to, so that's what I interned with. So I went back and built 2 tool suites for their for development of their silicon and or software, and I transitioned in that 7 years. After the first, I think 2.5 or 3 years, I transitioned into a program management role. And because of that transition, it also opened up, new skill sets needs to be developed. And it was interesting because I was participating in this company from a different angle. And so that's also another reason why it kind of kept me around for a couple more years. So the transition there was from a software engineer to a program manager. And the reason why that happened was program manager, like nobody really goes to school for program management. And it's kind of this nebulous thing, which in industry is quite important. But you don't really go to school for that. And so like no one actually comes out with a degree, and you don't hire program managers out of school and staff them on programs and things like that. And in 2007, I think 2006 or 7, this company that I was with, Surf, that IPO'd, gotten really, really successful because that back in the days where now we were starting to have not so much smartphones as we know of it today, but feature phones. So kind of like less dumb than a regular mobile phone, I guess. And GPS was becoming more prevalent. Everyone had a dash thing from Garmin or TomTom. And then FCC was starting to mandate into these like less dumb smartphones. And with that taking off, we were just selling a bunch of chipsets. And then competition came and large companies like Broadcom sued us, and we lost a lawsuit to Broadcom, which basically got into an IP dispute. And basically we lost the lawsuit, which meant we needed to go back and change one line of code in every single binary that was ever deployed from the company. We had no way of tracking what we deploy. It was like so ad hoc. I just like, I sync my code, I make the change, and then like I make random changes, and then I just deploy to customers. So just like, there was no way for us to go trace back. I mean, just not that there wasn't any way. Yeah, actually, there wasn't any way for us to go trace back. What we needed to do was change the line of code and basically update everybody. But we also didn't have a scalable mechanism to do that. And through this experience, we also like understood that like if teams are operating all in silos, what you end up happening is when you deliver something, that thing, whatever you deliver, is incoherent. So once you test it, you're like, oh, the first time you test it, you're like, it's broken. And in the silicon world, that costs you a lot of money. So all of these efforts starts popping up, and then just like, I have a natural tendency of like asking the why questions, and I have a natural tendency of like wanting to bring people together and optimize. And so I just kind of went into that role naturally. And then later they started realizing that having this function is super important. So they, put a function together, and I changed jobs into that. And that's when I really discovered that this crossroad between leadership and technical understanding, but then ability to lead the team and communicate where things are, just this kind of a crossroads role, I guess you call it. Also a combination of both hard and soft skills was something that really spoke to me. So from there, I just basically, stuck with the role, and I've been a program manager ever since. And through different companies and different kind of contexts, whether it's like silicon or software or building consumer hardware devices, which is the field that I'm in now, I've just taken the role and just continued with it, and I really enjoy it. And now at Facebook, I run a team of about 30 folks, of mostly program managers, and kind of building the technology that powers, building the software and algorithmic technology that powers AR, VR headsets. So that's kind of the role of my team, and I still really enjoy it.
I really like that explanation, because one of the things that we do at the center in different contexts is also trying to bring people together. Like when we try to build the center, we talked about we really want Purdue we want to weave Asian and Asian American experiences into Purdue campus, but we also want to bring groups of people together. So I'm curious also, I really like that explanation. So in your context, even though you are now in large, well-known companies, do you feel that it's still possible to have that sense of community compared to the first company that you worked with for 7 years? Is that sense of, obviously is the togetherness needs to achieve something, right? But do you think it's still possible? And do you also can get to know the people, right, in really close way as you did in your first company? Is that still the case, or how is it different now in terms of building a community?
I think it's a good question. I think in big companies, what you do lack is that like sense of camaraderie. In small companies, basically you live or die by meeting a certain deadline. because whatever you do, like, you know, you pick up this thing, pick up that thing, and if you don't do those two things, the impacts are immediate. So like if you don't ship something on time, like your revenue drops, and it's like you can feel it. I mean, like that's just like it's just the life of a small company is like everything, every impact is very like felt immediately. Whereas in, you know, big companies like the Amazons, Googles, and the Facebooks, it's less immediate. Especially the groups that I've worked in are mostly special project, I would say, groups, and these are the groups that are, you know, big bet, high risk. Basically, we munch off money that other people bring into the company, and so the impact of what we do and don't do in a big company is less immediate. And because of that, you don't get that sense of like, we've got to work together and, you know, we got to like, you know, charge up this hill because we'll live or die by it. There's just not a sense of that. So, so that's just in general, the contrast between a big and a small company. I will say though, in big companies, it's kind of like going to school in Purdue, is that it's not really about the company. Like the company becomes like sort of like, more of an ambient thing. So yeah, like we all work with Facebook, but it's very ambient. The thing that's more important is the microcosm that is that is around you, and you have an impact in that microcosm, and so you can create a community if you like. And so, you know, through companies that I've worked at, or at least in Silicon Valley, this is true, is like lots of times people will tell you that, you know, you don't get a job in Silicon Valley by applying to some like website. It's the relationships in the community that carries you through these company walls. And I repeatedly tell people that, because that's kind of what's so special about human beings is these relationships. And so I think at least I try to make a conscious decision to like build that community wherever I am at. And, you know, I've had relationships from different companies, and some of them, like, you know, that I've worked with like 10 years ago, and now like we're working together again today. And that's pretty joyful for me. Yeah, and like I also take a bunch of interviews a week, and people ask me like, what makes you stay at Facebook? You know, some people will look at Google and they're like, I'd stop at Google. Why would you leave and go to Facebook? And then I'll say, yeah, you know, like one of the reasons that's keeping me at Facebook is because of the people around me. Like it's really the people. Yeah.
So what was your favorite project that you've worked on and why?
In my career?
Yes.
Probably for sure the Amazon Echo project. Well, that and the Fire TV project. So on the Echo project, I was the first program manager on the project when the team was just 5 people. And so I had a special opportunity to basically create prototypes, bring it to Jeff Bezos and have him, you know, tell us what he liked, what he didn't like, and kind of iterate through that process. And the thing I really liked about the project was that it has a clear purpose from Jeff. He just wants more people signing up to Amazon services. So it's very nice. It's a clear purpose. And he left the breadth of how to do it up to us. So that was kind of fun. And also I've never done a hardware program management role before. So I've never had to go to China, run builds, and all that stuff is new to me as a program manager, even though the program management skill sets that you deploy are like similar, but I've never had to done that. So that was fun for me. And then also some of my best friends I still have today are from that period. Then I moved to the Fire TV project, and there I worked as a software launch program manager. And so I'd taken the team to basically solve some of the like most critical user experience problems on the platform by adding like, you know, accelerators or like fixing bugs and the software in the Bluetooth stack and things like that. So basically solve critical, like I guess, blocking issues, and then also launching it. So it was probably the first Amazon launch in New York City that was not a Kindle or a tablet. So it's the first time they had done like a new category of devices. And so they had a big launch event in New York City, and just prepping for it, it was super fun. Yeah.
Thank you for that story. Um, and now with COVID-19, obviously, so many people are struggling, and I'm wondering how this situation affects your work and the company and the people around you, if you can tell us, and also what kind of changes you can foresee of you, especially for our students who are interested in career development. Um, how would you say to them, or what kind of encouragement or advice would you give us?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting era. I think this is week 7 of me working from home. Um, yeah, I think I'm pretty fortunate to work for a company like Facebook. Like, hiring has not stopped, and so like hiring has not stopped, and Facebook is pretty generous in terms of like, keeping workers who are not able to perform their work remotely, but still, making sure that they get paid. So in general, I think in Silicon Valley, we're pretty fortunate to be able to have this setup. Going one step beyond that, like I think working from home, it's kind of taken a toll on a lot of people. So, and some of them may be more evident to the naked eye than others. Like some, have like single parent with 4 kids, and like kids are all at home and needing homeschool. So trying to like interleave between work and children and just house chores is just nuts. So I've seen in this time people developing empathy, which I think is going to actually benefit us in the long run, because a lot of times, because we're working from home, we see that, and so we're more empathetic, or at least I see more leaders reminding people to be more empathetic. Whereas I think this actually exists even when we're, physically going to work. Not that it doesn't exist, it's now that we can see it. And it's probably more prominent because, just everyone being at home adds to that level of stress. So I do actually like the fact that we have more empathy. I do see people getting really stressed out, even, if they didn't have even if they didn't have like children or whatever to tend to, like the mental stress of being trapped at home and not having that social interoperability takes a toll from people. So I think that's also, something we need to keep in mind of. In terms of advice, in terms of how like I foresee this change our world from a working standpoint is, I don't know, in my 10 years, or like, I guess not in my 10 years, been here for a while, but for the last decade, I've seen companies, well, actually for the last 2 decades, I've seen companies try to offshore their work and then bring that back because they're realizing that it's hard to manage offshore. So bring that back. And then I've seen companies allowing for remote working because of this new wave of like just remote working, to closing the doors to that because it's harder to control. I think this is going to teach us to invest better in tools that actually works for us, and then allowing for remote working to blend into physically working. So I think it'll help with the traffic situation for sure. And it'll also allow the big companies to be more open to this flexibility of remote working. So I think that's actually a net positive. And I think the net positive part, and this ties into, I guess, for advice for your students, is that a lot of times you see opportunities for people who are geographically bound to a place of abundance. So, if I like go to school in University of Santa Clara or San Jose State, I am by proximity so close. It makes me a candidate more so than anybody from like yeah, like 5 state lines next to me. I think that's probably will start to change a little bit because this sense of physical proximity has just kind of gone away. And what you are left with is just time zones. And if people can, adjust according to time zones, the opportunities for co-working will change because of that. So given that, I'd encourage our students to not, because what I see in companies is to go above and beyond outside of the proximities of like their state that they're in requires a lot of work. And usually people only invest in that amount of work if they get a lot in return, meaning special hires for like, a certain specialty in a PhD program or whatever, people would go out of their way to like build an office or like hire people from, interesting locations around the world because it's purposely hired. For general like EEs or general like SWEs, like software engineers, it's more of an opportunity cost. So I'd actually encourage the students to reach out and to build more connections with people and like kind of also encourage the organizations to find ways to break down this kind of fictitious barrier and build more connections with people, basically close the connection, the opportunity connection, and not have it more so be limited to geography. I think that would be tremendously helpful for students because yeah, I guess that's.
Thank you. Tina, thank you so much for, joining us and telling us about your story. I really love that, how you would be able to have been able to just get a sense of community in whatever that you do and trying to break down boundaries. I think that's very meaningful to me personally, and that's something that I would really love to apply in my current role and in my personal life as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and thank you also, Gwen, for joining us today. Um, Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank
Yes.
you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Great.
Can we stop the recording, Gwen?